Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emily Sophia, and I'm going to be breaking down for you guys the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe's masterpiece, Guardians of the Galaxy. So, I will tell you up front that this review is going to be done in a two-part fashion. The first part of which is going to be spoiler-free, and the second being quite spoiler-full, as I am bursting with scenes and specific things that I wish to discuss with those of you who have seen it, but I also want to encourage those of you who have not to freaking do so. Okay, so I will let you know as soon as the spoilers begin. I'm not out to make any internet enemies, and I do apologize for the delay on this review. I had actually filmed an entire review that I ended up trashing because the very thought of going back to edit the material and listen to what I just recorded was like trying to brace myself to lay on a bed of nails, for whatever reason. Those of you who are content creators in any medium can probably relate. So anyways, I'm back. I've given myself a little time to process the magnificence that I just saw. And I did go and see the movie opening night. Granted, I didn't really know anything about Guardians of the Galaxy before the scene at the end of, was it at the end of the Avengers? I'm trying to remember where they first teased at the Guardians of the Galaxy with the scene with the Collector. You guys remember that, right? I don't remember which movie that was. I think it was the Avengers, but in there, so there was oohs and ahs, I remember at the very end, as some people apparently got what was going on. I didn't, but I was excited anyways, like the little Marvel puppy that I am, just wagging my tail at the idea of them making more movies to add to this universe and to enrich what we've already been seeing on the screen. So I didn't really know anything about the Guardians, and I guess that the comic storyline is, what, about 6 years old? So it's still kind of in its infancy, and it was a very fascinating decision for the Marvel team to bring this particular story and this set of characters to the screen, but am I complaining? I don't think so. I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dream of it. It was probably the best possible decision that they could make. And I do believe that this is one of the best Marvel ensemble cast films that we have seen yet. And I mean, I guess it's really down to the Guardians, the Avengers, and X-Men as far as the big Marvel team films that we've seen, and I pretty much love them all. But this as a space opera, as a journey into the wild, wild west of the lands beyond planet Earth, this was such a fun adventure and so very different and unique in its own right. It's so hard to say anything without spoiling it all. Spoiling. How very interesting. I'm inventing words. You can feel free to take that down in your dictionary. But anyways, what I loved most about this movie, spoiler-free wise, is I love the way that they developed the characters. For me, personally, what I'm looking for from even an action sci-fi film, which perhaps my expectations are a little bit misplaced because not every action sci-fi film does this, but I'm really honed in on the characters. I want to see what they're all about, their backgrounds, their struggles, their headbuttings, how they come together, why, when, where, what does it, the chemistry, and that is just so flawlessly and impeccably done with all of the very diverse characters in Guardians. So we've got Peter Quill / Star-Lord, played by Chris Pratt, who I fell in love with via Parks and Rec. Andy Dwyer, Burt Macklin, you know, that's what I was thinking when I first heard that Chris Pratt was cast for the role. It's like, Burt Macklin he's on the case, and he's in outer space. I could see him being ready for that. Anyways, and then we've got Zoe Saldana, however you pronounce her name, as Gamora, a super assassin, rebel, green skin chick. And then we got Drax the Destroyer, played by Dave Bautista. Vin Diesel as Groot, which I think was hilarious that they cast Vin Diesel in this role wherein he only really says 3 words throughout the entirety of the film. I mean, really he is a physical actor and he has a distinctive voice, so they kind of picked his best features for this role as the giant, sentient, sometimes friendly giant tree being. it actually worked really well. I don't hold him to be the most charismatic actor in the business. Really, it's all about that physicality, and I think that they did a good job. They really could have picked anybody for that role, because I'm assuming that he made some serious dollar bills from this film. But anyways, that was a really, really interesting casting. And then Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon, whom we shall refer to henceforth as simply Rocket. Those of you who have seen the film know why. And I also thought it was weird that Bradley Cooper was cast. Again, it's like these big namers behind these characters that are largely going to be CGI'd and edited and stuff like that. So it's like, why would you necessarily want to pick the big namers if we already know this is a Marvel film? It's gonna be a bombastic success, but he did such a fantastic job. I loved his voice acting, and the character was witty as freaking hell. Raise your hand if you are somewhat awkwardly attracted to a raccoon now, as of seeing this movie or seeing the trailers for this movie. It's weird. I'm rolling with it. But anyway, so we see all these characters come together, and they all have very different goals and very different ambitions. And they're not completely reconciled or unified by the end of the film, you know? They're not just like, oh, power of friendship, now we all want the same thing, you know? But, there are some movies where it kind of seems like that happens when all these characters come together, but they all have their own niches and their own hang-ups, the things they're after, the things they want, the things they believe in, and yet the ways in which they come together, in which they attract and repel, it is truly the best part of the film and where the majority of the humor comes from, because they kind of destroy the old genre of heroics and nobility. You know, they're constantly making fun of themselves even when they do things that are heroic, and that's kind of the irony at the heart of the film, is like they're all kind of fed up with these cliches, and they're gonna be whatever they want to be. You know, the writers who did the dialogue and constructed these characters were aware of all of those cliches, and the way that they went about blowing them out of the water was truly flawless. I laughed, I cried, and often both of them at once. And that's how you know that you got a serious win on the screen. Also love the soundtrack. It was fantastic. 1970s pop, soul, rock, the greatest hits. Like, I listen to this music all the time as well. So me and Peter Quill just had a serious soul fusion. We were just, yeah, like that. So it was very, I won't say much about how the soundtrack was used, because again, that's something that's really integral to the story, but I love that music was at the heart of this superhero movie. You know, and then there's also an original soundtrack as well, produced by, what is his name? I am trying to remember. Oh, Tyler Bates. Yeah, he composed the original score for the really intense action scenes and emotional moments and stuff like that. But the way in which the rest of the soundtrack was used was so brilliant and just infused the story with this really down-to-earth humanness. You know, we got all these aliens and creatures and humanoid beings all together, but there is a heart and soul to this. And the relationship that the characters have with the music is awesome. Oh, it was just so brilliantly done. Loved it to death. I mean, for those of you who saw X-Men Days of Future Past, think of the time in a bottle scene, and then that kind of humor, that moment being prolonged throughout much of the film. And not in a way that's stretched out. I mean, it just, like, we wanted more and we got more every single time. Music was great. Action was great. Extremely fun and hilarious. Good dialogue. What I will tell you is that the movie itself, plot-wise, differs a lot from the things that they showed in the trailers and the promotional materials. And you know how they did all those little character bits, like, you know, this is Peter Quill, and they did all the little trailers for the characters and showed scenes from the movie. A lot of those scenes actually don't appear in the movie, or they edited them such that you think that a scene is gonna go a certain way and it goes the other. So, and I think that that's something that happens a lot, especially like with television when they're making trailers for an upcoming week's episode. They might even use a different take of a scene in the trailer. So you're expecting a moment to go down like this and it goes down like that. But that's kind of what's fun too, is that it subverts those expectations. And so yeah, that's just something to be aware of. The only thing that I would complain about is that the villain at the heart of the film, Ronan the Accuser, is kind of more on the bland side of the spectrum, I suppose, in contrast to the Guardians themselves. But and there are a few characters who I wish that they would have done more with, but I think that there's a lot of room for them to grow and be used in the future films. I'm assuming that they're going to be returning. So, anyways, that's the end of my spoiler-free stuff, so let us get into the spoilery-ness. I'll see you later. Those of you who have not yet seen the film, come on back here though. Put this video in your queue, get ready to comment, and we'll have some nice chats on the internet, as people do in this world. Anyways, so let's talk about what happened. Okay, so I need to say more about the music and about the way in which the music was used. I love that we began with a young Peter Quill listening to Awesome Mix #1 while his mother is about to die of what we assume is cancer or some terminal disease. And then, so we began with this really soul-crushing moment with him losing his mother, and he refuses to be physically near to her in the process of losing her. But we see how the music that she has given him is something that sticks with him the rest of his life, even in outer space. Like, he's got this tricked-out spaceship, all crazy high-tech as compared to the stuff that we have here on Earth, of course. Gorgeous technology, and in the heart of that, he's got a cassette player. You know, and so he's an Earth boy through and through. He's a space cowboy, and he's just rocking through the universe, ravaging worlds with his tunes and dancing about as he does so. He's a troublemaker. He's the Han Solo of this movie. Like, he's got his jam, he's got his swagger, and but you know, he's not necessarily the center hero of it all. And sometimes he likes to be like, yes, I did quite a heroic thing back there, but it's so tongue-in-cheek that it doesn't even seem like he himself sees himself as a hero, if that makes sense, you know. So he's going after the orb because it's worth a lot of money. You know, he doesn't know about Xandar. Is that the name of the world that Ronan wants to destroy? Or wanted to destroy, whichever it may be. So nobody yet really knows the destructive capacity of this orb, or at least Peter doesn't. And then we've got Rocket and Groot decide to go after Peter because Yondu put a bounty on his head, and then Gamora goes after him to get the orb, and she's about to double-cross Ronan and Thanos because she's not exactly comfortable in her adoption situation. She is nobody's baby girl, and in fact had her family taken away from her by Thanos, who I thought was going to be a bigger villain in this film, but really it was more of kind of a power struggle between Thanos and Ronan. Then focusing in on Ronan once he gets the orb, he's going to do it. What he wants to do, and I also heard that Thanos is not going to be in... he's not going to be in Age of Ultron, the next Avengers movie. So I think that he might even be saved for the final film of the Avengers trilogy, assuming that they go the trilogy route. anyway, so he's kind of in the picture, more of a big talking head, and Ronan's got his freaking boxy makeup, you know, like teenage girl crying her mascara down her face status. He's got that dark look, emo look about him. He's out for vengeance and world destruction and whatnot. So is Drax, Drax the Destroyer, whose family was murdered by Ronan. And so again, we have all these characters whose intentions and goals are super different. They all end up in prison together, and as they're thrown into this mess of things, they kind of realize that everybody's got different skills to bring to the table. And on the table is the issue of how they're gonna get out of there. All of them realizing that ultimately it would be best for them all to face off against Ronan and to get this orb away from him. Whether it's for the honor, for vengeance, for money, and in the end, they all still kind of want their own things, even when they decide to band together as the Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think it's really interesting how they're first labeled as the Guardians of the Galaxy by Ronan, who thinks that he's about to deal their sorry butts a new one. He's pretty sure that he's ready to champion this whole situation. He's like, look, all you people, these are your Guardians of the Galaxy. And it's a hilarious notion, because really, what are they guarding other than their own asses, you know? But at the same time, I mean, prior to that, they decide that they need to bond together and be ready to sacrifice their lives to get this orb, you know. In the back of their heads, there's still this hope that, like, if we live past this, maybe we'll get something back. But so there is a sense of honor that they find in one another, and then in kind of their duty to the rest of the world. And that, so anyways, you know, but they really haven't had the chance to prove themselves as the Guardians of the Galaxy. And then, of course, in that moment where they all link arms and they absorb the power of the Infinity Stone, and that pretty much turns Ronan on his head. And then they've got that moment that's like, bitch, we're the... I don't remember what the line was, but the way that Peter Quill delivered it was quite satisfying and deserved. It was also really funny how hard this film tried to be foul-mouthed and vulgar without really being able to, because they're trying to keep it PG-13. In fact, I think that's why they cut out some of the scenes that were in the trailers, like the topless Gamora scene never happened. Like, I was expecting this kind of one-night stand thing with Peter and Gamora, but we didn't get that. And I'm fine with that, too. You know, they have... I really enjoyed the arc of Peter and Gamora's characters. Gamora being very distrustful of Peter. Peter trying to use his womanizing ways to get to her because she's a pretty lady. But in the end, you know, she finally gratifies him and shows him that there is a trust established, that there is something there by grooving a little bit to his jams after he tries to introduce her to them earlier on. And then uses pelvic sorcery on her, as she says. But yeah, so I think it was really interesting how they kind of come into the hero status, but then by the end they still kind of reject that. They're pretty much told outright, hey, you might want to consider not breaking laws if you're gonna go out into the galaxy again. And then, of course, Rocket's like, but what if I want something from someone more than the person who has it wants it? And then Drax is like, what if I want to rip out somebody's spine? Murder, theft, still options for them, you know? They're renegades and rebels and really out to do their own thing, go on adventures that will arguably end up saving lives and benefit all of alien kind, or whoever they're gonna be saving. But I just love that they are their own thing. They're quite different from the Avengers in that sense, and it would be fascinating if they did meet up. I think there would be quite a few ideological differences, shall we say. A little bit of friction. But another aspect that I loved about the characters was Drax's complete and utter inability to understand the concept of symbolism and metaphors. The whole scene with Peter trying to explain the symbol, the gesture of the finger to the throat, and in the end when like Drax is just, he is going ham, he is killing it literally, and he's like, haha, metaphor. As an English major, I got a serious kick out of that. That was really great. Peter having to constantly try to explain all these sayings and idioms and things from Earth to everybody else that he's with. And then even telling his friends about music on Earth and Kevin Bacon and Footloose. And so as they're shooting through the galaxy, warfare and bullets, lasers are flying, and I think Gamora says something like, yeah, or just like Kevin Bacon, you know, liberating the world and teaching everybody to get up on their feet and dance, you know? So there's all these fun music metaphors and connections that characters are trying to make, but you've got super literal Drax and then very charismatic Peter and Rocket, and again, they all speak these different languages. Different wants, different goals, but the way that they come together is just, it's just so heartwarming. And freaking Groot, like, props to all the original tree huggers, but I think he got a lot more company now thanks to that guy. And I'm like, baby Groot at the end jamming to Jackson 5, like, I died. There were tears in the audience. I could feel the tear glands quivering. Like, it was such a great and cathartic moment, of course, because they made us wait a really long time to bring Groot back into the picture. They made us wait for it and earn that. And I appreciate that very much, because I didn't know one way or the other. It was like, I don't know, the tree's gone. But then as soon as Rocket had planted the little stick in the pot, I was like, okay, he's coming back. He can do this. And then the "We Are Groot" moment, that was extremely powerful. Again, just fabulous performances by everyone. My only complaint was really that Ronan was kind of just your typical baddie in the intergalactic universe. Like, it reminded me a lot of Thor, The Dark World, I believe it was. Yeah, so just kind of somewhat more of a stale villain, I suppose you could say. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Thanos. I would think Ronan was probably out of the picture. I hope that Nebula is still around, because, I mean, she's definitely still got a bone to pick with Gamora. Also, I'm guessing that in the next Guardians films, they're going to delve into Peter Quill's true identity and his father, who was very briefly hinted at throughout the movie. And then at the very end, Yondu's guys are like, yeah, maybe it's, should we have taken him to his dad? And I read a little bit of the comics before seeing this film, so that's going to be very interesting once Peter kind of discovers who he is, and he knows by the end of this movie that he's kind of part alien, and that's why he was able to contain the Infinity Stone. And what was also weird about the Infinity Stone was that they didn't really explain much about it, like how it worked and how it was that the Guardians were able to just kind of put that one on lock. It was definitely not what we saw coming, but at the same time, I don't know that they fully understand how it works, so they're just going for it. Whatever, like, I can let some of those things slide and some of the more generic sci-fi tropes that kind of work to their way into the movie. What James Gunn and his team did was they picked a formula, and then excuse me, they just fantastically wove these brilliant and fun characters into the mix. A lot of great humor, a lot of fun irony, flipping the old norms and stereotypes, and just cutting up a rug, giving us something new and fresh. And that's what Guardians did so well. So it got us out of the box a little bit and shook us up. Great battle sequences and getting to see how all the characters relate to one another and how their sensitive sides come out, their more hardcore sides, and it's great. They're a great team. A team of outcasts and, well, really outlaws. That's what's fun about it, because we kind of see with the Avengers, it's, I don't know if you'd really call them like the outcasts, because like Captain America, you know, he became this huge icon, and so in that sense it's, you know, would you describe him as an outcast, or, you know, but it's fun to really see the outlaws and what they can give back to the galaxy, how they defend the innocents while at once harboring their more violent tastes, and just the sheer fun that like Groot and Drax had as they were whooping some fanny. It was quite hilarious. And of course the scene with Groot like just smashing the guys back and forth, and that was a lot like the Avengers scene with the Hulk and Loki. And just that total slapstick humor that comes out of left field is just so charming. I love it. I love it. So I better let you guys go. My camera is dying. I'm hungry. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for listening to this review. Leave all of your thoughts and feelings and hopes and dreams and whatever down in the comments. I would love to talk with you guys about anything that I missed. As a whole, I would give this movie like an 8.5 or 9 out of 10. Really just because the whole villain factor was kind of cliched, but again, the characters themselves, the ones that we were following and that got the limelight, that was what really honed it in for me, and they were done very well, very hilariously, and that's really what I wanted. That's really what I was looking for. So it's good stuff. All right, so I'll be back before you know it. Let's have a good old chat, and I'll have some more vlogs to come in the future. So, mwah. Y'all take care.